Hi everyone, and welcome to week 2 of the Facebook Ads Paid Acquisition Deep Dive course updated for iOS 14.5. This week we're going to be talking about tracking management. So there are multiple reasons that you need tracking. These are the 3 core ones, but there's lots of other reasons as well. But data and measuring your return on investment is probably the key one that people think about when it comes to tracking. Why do you set up your tracking? You set it up so you can measure your return on ad spend. But there's a whole lot more to tracking, and there's so much that you can get from it. So you can also use it to better leverage conversion focused campaign structures. So there is campaign structures that you will need your tracking set up for in order to use, and typically these are some of the better performing campaign structures when it comes to getting a return on investment. So it's hugely important for this step of your campaigns as well. And also, it allows you to target your audience more effectively and create audiences. So, the more data that you feed the pixel, the more data that you feed the Facebook ecosystem, the more data that you can leverage after the fact when it comes to setting up audiences. When it comes to audiences, we have a week dedicated to that, and we will be going through all of the different types of audiences you can create from your data. But for this session, we're going to focus purely on setting up the data, setting up your tracking, and how to structure that. There's multiple different options. I will be going through different types of structuring and how the new changes have impacted it and what you're going to see as a result of that throughout this session as well. So the first thing, and that I noted last week as well in terms of the Facebook changes, is that normally in your ad account, well, in the past in your ad account, you would have been able to see campaigns, ad sets, and ads along your tabs here. The new resource center here on the left is your hub essentially for all things iOS 14 that are changing. So you'll get this little tab over here on the left where you can see edit one paused ad, review audiences that have decreased in size. So this will give you things to look at on the basis of the changes. Now, if you are a brand new ad account, or if you haven't set up your tracking, or if you haven't set up your structuring yet for your account, you will see a to-do list essentially in here, like verify your domain, set up your events and things like that. So this is a helpful guide when you're in here. You'll get the little updates up here, and what you'll do over here on the right hand side is get regular updates on things that are changing as a result of iOS 14. So you can see here campaign results will be counted differently. So that's heavily kind of relevant to your tracking, your data management. As more people opt out of tracking on iOS 14 devices, statistical modeling may be used to account for some conversions that are completed on these devices. Recent updates to attribution settings may result in changes in the number of reported conversions, and some attribution windows will be unavailable. So previously you were able to look at a 28-day attribution window, and what an attribution window is how far back Facebook can look to allocate a conversion to the advert. So if someone 3 weeks ago, let's say, clicked on your advert, didn't convert, but then they took that action at a later date, Facebook could retrospectively count that conversion. Now it is a 7-day window, so it's slightly different. And that all these things impact your metrics and what you're looking at from it. Also, new limit on web events. We'll be going through this in a little bit more detail during the session as well. So what this means is that you can only have a restricted number of 8 web events that you can use for your targeting options on the platform as well, in terms of aggregated event measurement. Now we'll go into that in a bit more detail as well. So you want to be thinking about at this stage, what are the 8 key things that I want to know from my Facebook ads? And typically for most people, 8 is a lot and is enough for them. I've seen some accounts where this has created a little bit of panic and we've had to prioritize things. But typically if you're, say for example, in the e-commerce or retail space, your purchase, add to cart, view content, like those are the 3 ones that you're really worried about. So some accounts are more heavily impacted by this than others. Then you might look at an example like Growth University, where we are tracking things like 3 different membership signups. We're looking at people who sign up to the newsletter. We want to look at people who sign up for webinars. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's nearly 7 gone already. So there's some cases where this is a little bit more complex, but you will have to prioritize and think about that as well. And we'll be going through that in a bit more detail too. So the first thing I always recommend is getting started with Google Tag Manager. And this is what I like to use as a hub for all tracking purposes. So you can go to Google Tag Manager, you can set up an account, and you can integrate it into your website. Down here on the bottom right hand side, you can see that this is a plugin here for WordPress specifically. You can just attach that to your WordPress site. If you're using Shopify or Wix or any other alternative service like Squarespace and places like that, they typically have just an option where you could just add that in pretty easily. But why I recommend Google Tag Manager is because it can become your hub for all your tracking, whether you're setting it up on Facebook, Google, any platform out there that you want to advertise on. You can use Google Tag Manager as your hub for all of the information. That being said, it is not a necessary requirement for specifically Facebook ads. You can take this, and I'll be going through the options with this, but I'll also show you the alternative options as well. But if you want to look at having a hub for all of your tracking, I would highly recommend setting up your Google Tag Manager account and installing the Google Tag Manager code on your website. So when it comes to setting up your pixel, you need to go to business.facebook.com, essentially go into your business manager. When you're in your ad account or wherever you are, these 9 dots typically always have the option to get to your business settings if you're looking for it. And under data sources, you'll see pixels. So here you can see you can add the code using a partner integration, and that's your WordPress, Shopify and things like that. And it's very, very easy to do that process. It's just an automated system where you can just synchronize it up with your partner platform. You can also manually add the pixel code to your website. You can do this very easily by sending, say, this code to your web developer, and they can then take that away and implement it correctly on the website, or you can take that action yourself, or you can manually add the pixel code to your website by copying and pasting it into Google Tag Manager, which is what I referred to earlier as your hub for all things tracking. And that way you just set it up on your website once, and then everything else can be done in the Google Tag Manager ecosystem afterwards. I will show you how to do that step as well. You can also email the instructions to your developer, and that is essentially the same as manually adding the code to the website, but it just gives the instructions in an automated email format directly to your developer. This is what it looks like to add the tracking to your Google Tag Manager. So in Google Tag Manager, and I'll show you quickly here in Google Tag Manager, what happens in Google Tag Manager is you have 3 options really that are really important: your tags, triggers, and variables. And the key difference between the tags and triggers, which are the most important for this session, is a tag is your piece of code. So say, for example, you want to add Google Analytics, that's your tag. If you want to add your Facebook pixel, that's your tag. And then your trigger is when you want that to fire, when you want it to send a signal back to the platform. So if you had a Facebook pixel tag, you'd want to put that in here, and then you would want to create a trigger for all pages because you want it to fire on all pages. So that's how it works. And it's very simple in the process, where you just click new, you just add your tag, and you can see along here that there is all of these different options to add in your tag. Where there isn't an option for Facebook, of course, because hey, Google and Facebook are never going to speak to each other properly, but you can just use the custom HTML option, and this goes for any type of tracking really that you don't see in the list. You can just use the custom HTML option and copy and paste in your tracker there. So as you can see here, again, this is just copying and pasting it into this, and then you just set up a trigger of all pages. Over in Google Tag Manager, what you'll see in the triggers options is something very similar to the tags, where you have just a big long list of options. And this is what I find really exciting, I guess, about Google Tag Manager, is it gives you the option to do things very easily. So you can say, I want a page view on all pages. That's my trigger. That's when I want it to happen. I want the Facebook pixel or whatever tracker I'm using to fire on all pages. But you can make that really niche as well. You can say, okay, I want it when there's a timer. So I only want it to fire when someone's been on the website for 3 minutes. And that might be a great way of tracking if someone's reading your blogs, because why would they be on the page for more than 4 or 5 minutes unless they're reading it? Scroll depth might be another indicator of that, or the two of them combined. So you can do these cross references with these trigger types as well. It is a little bit more advanced, but I would highly recommend doing some tutorials on Google Tag Manager, having a look into the platform, seeing how you can use it, because it becomes hugely beneficial when you want to start using it across multiple different platforms. So you only need to set up a trigger once, and then you can say, well, I want it to be associated with the tag for Google Ads. I want it to be associated with my Google Ads. I want it to be associated with my Facebook ads. So you can use the triggers in multiple different places then as well. So I'd highly recommend checking it out. But here, as you can see, this is what it looks like when it's all done. You've added the pixel code here and you want it to fire on all pages. That is your basic setup. If you haven't done the step before where your developer has either taken that action or you've used a partner integration. So all of these options are perfectly viable to get the Facebook pixel onto your website. From there, inside in the business settings again, you want to, instead of going into data sources where we were last time, you want to make your way down to brand safety and look at domains. Domains, you need to now add your domain in here, and also, as you can see here, verified. You need to verify your domain in order to advertise with Facebook and send people to your website, and to be able to count those events from people who are on iOS 14.5 or further devices, which is going to become more and more people over time. So what you just need to do here is just click add, you pop in your you put in your domain, and it gives you 3 different options to verify your domain. You can do it through your DNS settings with your hosting partner, whether you use, say, for example, a platform like GoDaddy or something like that. You can just copy and paste a piece of information into your DNS files in there, and into your DNS. It's a TXT file. And then what you can also do is copy and paste a piece of information into the header of your website. Again, you can also use something like Google Tag Manager for this, although typically what you want to do, and the best way to get it verified quickly, is just to copy and paste a little piece of code that they give you onto your website into the header of the homepage, and that will do the trick. And then there's also the option for HTML file upload. This step may require a developer as well if you're feeling uncomfortable with that process, but it is becoming more frequent and commonplace, so I'm sure there's plenty of tools out there as well, but the easiest way to do this is just to copy and paste it into the code of your website as well. Then over here on the top left hand side, you can see these 3 lines, and when you click on that, it'll show you all of these different options, and you can see here the events manager. This is where you want to go next. So your pixel has been set up. You're either using Google Tag Manager, or you've already implemented it manually on your website, or you've used a partner integration. And now you want the pixel to do different things for you. You want it to tell you different things about your business. So you go into the events manager, and this is what you're met with initially. So these are the new iOS 14.5 changes. So this little option pops up, and it says introducing Facebook's aggregated event measurement. Aggregated event measurement is a protocol for ad performance measurement, which processes web events from opted out devices to help you run effective ad campaigns while supporting customer choices regarding ad tracking from within our Facebook platform. So essentially what's happening here is they're aggregating the information, and they still want to give you as much information as possible from people who have opted out and no longer wish to be tracked. So how it works is your domains will be configured with up to 8 events from your existing pixel. So you have your pixel in place, this part of the step, and your domain verified. And this part of the step now is saying, okay, what 8 events am I going to allocate to my pixel? And Facebook then will give your events an initial priority based on their historical importance to your business. We'll apply the aggregated event measurement protocol to events to support measurement of web events from iOS 14 users. The highest priority event will be sent whenever a customer takes multiple actions during a conversion window. The conversion data will be available for iOS 14 ad campaigns and for measurement reporting. Now, what's important in this message is the highest priority note. So do you remember earlier when I mentioned that you're going to have to put 8 events together? What you're going to have to do with those 8 events is actually create a prioritization list from them. And what's interesting about that list is if you mix them up or don't put them in the correct order of priority, your data is going to be slightly skewed. It's going to be slightly skewed anyway, but it's going to be a little bit more skewed. So for example, I'll go back to the retail example where you want to have a purchase. A purchase is your end goal. It's the holy grail of what you want someone to do from your Facebook ad. Now, when you look at that, you want to make that the highest priority, followed potentially by add to cart, and then maybe view content below that. So you're tiering the priority of your events that are going to occur. Now, the reason you're going to do this is because you want Facebook to tell you a purchase over an add to cart, over a view content. If these multiple events will potentially happen, because if someone goes to your website and they view a product and then they add it to cart, and then they purchase it, they have to have taken the first two events first. So you want them to be able to tell you about the purchase more so potentially than the add to cart or the view content, even though it may give you some information as well. So just bear in mind and just think about that prioritization as well, and that's hugely important. Once you're in your events manager, once you get past the little iOS 14.5 notification, this is the page you'll be met with. And you have this little option here to add events. And you can just use the Conversion API. You can send web events directly from your server to your Pixel using the Conversions API. What is more typical is using it from a website or from the Pixel, or using custom conversions from either manually setting custom conversions in the platform, or by using Google Tag Manager if you want something a little bit more complex. When you click the From a New Website option, what you get the opportunity to do is, like, you can use a separate website or a new website as well. But when you look at it from the Pixel as well, you can add events using the Pixel code or the event setup tool. Now, the event setup tool is really handy if you are unfamiliar with tracking setup. What it essentially does is you click on this option here, and it says, okay, put in your URL. So you put in your website URL. You get brought to your website, and there's a little box that stays in the corner. And as you navigate your website, it says, would you like us to add this to tracking? Would you like us to add this to tracking? Might be a button, might be add to cart. Do you want us to take the conversion value with it? It is a very straightforward and highly visual setup. There's no code involved essentially, which is pretty handy. So think about that as well when it comes to these different setups. But typically from the Pixel is a very quick and easy option to use for vast majority of businesses. Now over here on the left, and I'll show you this here, but there's a little star, and that is for custom conversions. Now you can see here, you can just click just behind this boxes, create custom conversion, and a little big blue button. And when you click on it, this option here comes up to put in your conversion. So you can say, this is really helpful if it's something like, say here in Growth University, I use this option a lot, and just say, thank you page reached. And the thank you page might be thank you page for webinars, or thank you page, or whatever URL you have set for that specific thank you page. And then I create that, and then I'm able to track anyone who went to a URL that contains that, and therefore they must have signed up for the specific webinar that I'm looking for. So this is a pretty quick and easy option to use specific pages as your tracking event, and pages can be really effective way of doing this. You can also here, just before I go on to the next section, there is a drop down here, and what you can do is actually select an alternative type of conversion event. So it might not be website traffic, it might be your app, it might be something else. So there is a drop down feature here for different options, and you can kind of cross correlate your rules and do different things. So you can say URL contains this plus URL does not contain this, to make sure that you're kind of including and excluding. That is highly dependent on different business types. So that is kind of whether your business requires that flexibility, but it is there. And if you're looking for it, you're just kind of including and excluding, you're ruling things in and ruling things out by using this feature here. And you can opt for different options here as well. Now, this piece of code here is what you would use if you wanted to use Google Tag Manager. So this is, again, the slightly more advanced version of what you would do. I'm just going to show you here what this looks like. So I'm just going to copy and paste this piece of code to show you how it works over in Google Tag Manager. But it's a very simple process. What you want to do is set up a new tag. So you're going to go into your custom HTML again, which is always the one you use for Facebook, and you paste it in here. And let's just say, for argument's sake, it's thank you page reached tracking for Facebook. Let's just say. Okay, so this piece of code, no matter what you want, no matter what trigger you want to go with it, or no matter what trigger you want to feed back to Facebook, this piece of code always stays the same. All you need to do is change where it says custom conversion name here, and I'm going to change that to thank you page reached. And that is the piece of text that will feed back into Facebook so that you can recognize what trigger it is. So then when you click on trigger, it might just be, okay, I want the thank you page, and then I want the page view, just some of the page views when the URL contains thank you. Now this is slightly more complex, but again, I can use that trigger again and again and just change the tag or create a new tag essentially for Google Analytics or wherever I want it to feed into, and then I can just hit save. Now, when you use Google Tag Manager, it takes a little bit of time to feed back into Facebook. So if you don't see it straight away, don't panic. That's absolutely normal. But I could use the same piece of code again. We'll say custom HTML. And this time what I want is a button clicked to view more content. Let's say it's just a generic one. And in this instance, I want it to trigger when there's a button click, just some clicks, when the page URL contains something, we'll say thank you. And they also decided to, we'll say, you can see there's lots of different options in here, but you can say, okay, when the button click ID contained 1, we'll say. So there was a button on the thank you page that offered them to read more information, and the button click ID was 1. I'll show you how to find those IDs as well. So I'm just going to show you with the Growth University website. So say I wanted to track this button, you can right click on it on Google Chrome and hit inspect. And when you hover over the button, it will give you lots of information around it. So you can see here it's saying the class is this. So you can see when you hover over it, it just highlights a piece of information here, and it'll give you the piece of information here. You don't really need to understand what it is as much as what you're looking for. So once you hover over the button and it highlights it here, you can see it says class, and then inside in Google Tag Manager, what you can do is say, okay, I need the click class, and copy and paste it there. So I'm copying and pasting that there. So that's how it works. So there's lots of different ways. Google Tag Manager is kind of a whole thing in itself. That's just a brief introduction just to help you with your Facebook tracking. There's a lot more to it. I'd highly recommend taking a look at that in a bit more detail, but that is how you customize your Facebook tracking using the tool. So this piece of code will always remain the same. Again, you're always just changing what you want here, and then adding the relevant trigger to it so that you can say whatever this is, it has the correlating trigger so that it can feed back into your Facebook side of things then. You can also think about your marketing with Google Tag Manager or with your website. So do you remember I was showing you inside in Google Tag Manager that little timer feature? So some people like to put a delay on your traffic for higher quality remarketing. So essentially, when people get to your website and they bounce, they're very low quality. If you have a high traffic website, what you want to do is delay your Facebook pixel triggering for a few seconds. Say 3 seconds is the example I give here. And then what happens is that when you're remarketing, they're kind of a more qualified audience to remarket to in many instances. You can use the timer feature in Google Google Tag Manager to create this feature or to allow this feature to happen. But if you are on a website and you have manually added your code, what you can do instead is use this piece of code here and just copy and paste your Facebook pixel where in between where the two brackets are here and here, and that will create the delay on your behalf. So this just creates a higher quality audience. Again, nothing is wrong with the way we set it up at the start. This is just a little bit more advanced if you want to dig into your tracking a little bit deeper. You can always come back to this over time. If you're a startup or an early stage business, I would stay away from this for now because you're just trying to build as much of an audience as you can. You may not have the numbers for this, but over time, this is something to consider as you get more familiar with the platform, as you get more familiar with the different structures and tracking, just to have this, know that this option is available to you as well over time. So back into the events manager again, we're just back in the main section here of the events manager, and you can see here this new section called the aggregated event measurement. This again is all to do with the iOS 14 changes. So this is where you click to configure your 8 web events. If you haven't set these up before, you'll likely have been brought here directly from the resource center that we looked at the start, where it's giving you that new little to-do list from your ads manager. But if you're going in and changing things around, you want to go into your events manager, click on aggregated event measurement and configure your web events to get your web events prioritized and in order for your business. Now, if you have them already in place, which the account I'm looking at here does, you will get this pop-up, and this pop-up is extremely important. So affected ads and ad sets will be paused and some may no longer run. If you change event configurations, affected ads and ad sets will be paused for 72 hours to allow changes to take effect. Some changes may cause ads and ad sets to no longer run. So if you remove an event from your web configurations here, and an advert that you have running uses that event to either target people or optimize for, then in that instance, that advert will be paused. The same thing occurs if the configured event isn't removed, but is reorganized. So when you reorganize, you have to bear in mind that there's going to be a 72-hour delay on potentially your adverts running during this window. So that can be detrimental in some accounts. That can have a really heavy impact. So carefully consider your web configurations at the start, and if you need to change them, be aware of this 72-hour delay that may incur depending on how you are changing things around. Now, say for example, all of your campaigns are set to the purchase tag. You're a retailer, you're in the e-commerce space, all your goal is purchase and everything is running to that purchase tag. Now, what happens in that instance is it's the highest priority, and you want to add in the add to cart because you want to create a new campaign that is focused on trying to get as many people to the cart as possible. Maybe the purchases are kind of falling behind and you're just trying to drive something one step back to get higher volume. Well, in that instance, when you add in, say you only have the purchase one in your configured events, now you're adding in the add to cart. That won't impact because you're not moving it above the purchase tag. You're just adding it in below it. So you're not actually moving or changing anything of where the purchase tag is. You're just adding something in below it. Now, if I said I want to prioritize the add to cart and moved it up above the purchase tag, then my purchase focused conversion campaigns are going to be paused for 72 hours. So that's where it comes in. So you have to take that into consideration with this web event configuration. This is what that prioritization looks like when you're in there. So this is again a retail example. So you have your highest priority up here, purchase, add to cart, and I've just selected the drop down here so that you can see. So these are all the different trackers that we have in place with the pixel. So I can click view content next. I can just create all of these different things. I can do this value optimization and turn that on as well. There's lots of different options in here. So what you want to do is just prioritize your events and do this carefully. Over here then, on the left hand side, so as you can see, where it said pixel just here, you can also from the drop down change that to custom conversion. So if you want to make one of the events something from your custom conversion, you just select the drop down on the left and you change that to custom conversion to add in the relevant one there as well. So you can use the tracker from your pixel or you can use it from your custom conversion depending on how you set up your tracking to begin with. You can also use UTM parameters, and UTM parameters are tags that you can add to your URL. So this is an extra layer of tracking if you want to add it in. not a lot of people that I work with use them unless they are kind of a bigger company or they're getting kind of past that startup stage into the growth stage. But what they allow you to do is send more accurate data back to Google Analytics. So Google Analytics and Facebook don't speak to each other. If you're trying to track your results from Google Analytics and you're seeing, oh, well, only 10 people came through from Facebook, it's likely completely wrong. It's what Google typically does a lot of the time is incorrectly add the Facebook information into direct traffic, or other and things like that. So it's often really, really, really wrong. So UTM parameters can help you make better decisions and have better data in your Google Analytics. So it's important to think about, because if it's marking it as direct or just a broad generic brush mark of social, then you're not getting much from it. The same can be said every time I reference Facebook here. This obviously also incorporates anything from Instagram as well, as they're all under the same umbrella. But this is just something to think about. If you'd like a little bit more information on UTM parameters, I'd recommend Neil Patel has a blog. It's just called The Ultimate Guide to Using UTM Parameters, and it takes you through these in a step-by-step guide. So this is just an additional resource to help you as well. So that has been this week's session on tracking. Thank you so much for joining. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at jen@growthuniversity.io, or alternatively, you can ping me in Slack as well. But if you have any, this is a complex part of the setup, and I can completely understand that. So if you are a member, you have the opportunity to have a one-to-one call with me as well. You can also reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to help. So if you have any questions, need any additional information on setting this up, please feel free to reach out to me. Can't wait to see you next week.